On the 13th and final Sunday of the season, we call to mind the freedom of belief section of our Unitarian Universalist bylaws, which says, congregational freedom and the individual's right of conscience are central to our UU heritage. Congregations may establish statements of purpose, covenants, and bonds of union, so long as they do not require the members adhere to a particular creed. On this last Sunday of summer, we bring attention to the turning of the seasons and the turning of our days and years with our hymn number 51, Lady of the Season's Laughter. And you will stand, I hope, if you can, and Bruce will play through the whole thing to remind us what this hymn is about. Good morning. I'm Barbara Martin, she, her, your celebrant this morning.
And I'm the Reverend Meredith Garmon, minister of this congregation.
Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Des Moines. Our building is located on land that has been home to humans for 12,000 years, starting with people of woodland culture and later the Iowa, Sauk, and Meskwaki. Other animals, such as the Carolina parakeet, extinct since 1918, once roosted in these lands. And as we enter this space, the ghosts of humans and other animals past are among us. We are called to join in the work of education, reparation, and healing for all species.
We are a people not of belief or doctrine or dogma or creed, but of promise to walk together, of commitment to one another, of love, of covenant.
We covenant to do the work of living our Unitarian Universalist values: interdependence, equity, transformation, pluralism, generosity, and justice, all centered on love.
And we covenant, as our bond of union says, to associate ourselves together for the study and practice of morality and religion as interpreted by the growing thought and noblest lives of humanity, hoping thereby to prove helpful one to another and to promote truth, righteousness, and love in the world.
We covenant, as our church's mission says, to love radically, grow ethically and spiritually, and serve justly.
And we covenant to care for our own well-being, each other's well-being, and the well-being of our community as a whole. We will recognize the inherent worth and dignity of all, be respectful and kind, valuing the gifts and individuality of all, listen with empathy and consider the impact of our words and actions, be patient and understanding with each other, find a pathway, and work for reconciliation. All of these expressions of the covenant that brings us together bind us and make us who we are.
Today is the 13th and last Sunday of summer. Fall begins September 22nd. The moon is waxing gibbous, and the harvest moon will be full on Tuesday night, September 17. This full moon will be the occasion of the Moon Festival or Mooncake Festival, a festival harvest celebration by the Chinese culture.
And on the Hindu calendar, tomorrow is Vishvakarma Puja, dedicated to the divine architect of the universe, the personification of divine creativity, and the patron deity of all craft workers.
A special welcome to our visitors. For those of you on Zoom, thank you for tuning in and keeping muted. And if you are here with children, there's childcare downstairs, or you can feel free to keep children with you or to use the play area in the back.
Our mission is to grow, and one of our values is transformation. We have a plan to help you grow and transform. It's described in the brochure Thematic Ministry at First Unitarian. If you don't have a copy, they are on the back table, and do pick up the September issue of Connecting in the basket just outside the doors. And now, our chalice lighting.
On the final Sunday of the season, we dedicate our chalice to freedom of belief. Please join with me in the chalice lighting words from the Passover Haggadah in your order of service. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, Spirit of freedom.
Good morning. I'm Doug Opperly, he, him, his pronouns, and chair of the Progressive Voices Concerts team. And I'm excited to share with you that the 14th season of the Progressive Voices Concert Series will soon return to this beautiful, acoustically excellent auditorium. As always, we'll be bringing a diverse roster of singer-songwriters from across the continent and across the sea who can engage your mind, touch your heart, and uplift your spirit. And in addition to bringing you some great entertainment, the net proceeds from the concerts also helps support financially the work of the church.
Good morning, everyone. My name is John Morrow, and I use he, him pronouns, he, his, and I'm a pastoral care associate for our congregation. Pastoral care associates are here to help members of our congregation talk through and process any significant transition. If that's you, I invite you to speak to me or another member of the pastoral care team, or email pastoralcareteam@ucdsm.org. We haven't had any joys or concerns submitted this week, but we know, of course, that they are present. One way we create this beloved community is caring for one another in tangible ways when help is needed. Often, that is through providing rides or meals, and right now we have a meal sign-up for a newer family to our congregation who has welcomed a new baby. The sign-up is in our church Facebook group to see Janice Hawkins. And we also have a more specialty type request for someone who can seal woodwork, just a couple of doors and shelves. See Janice or Laura Berardi if you can lend your help in that way. You can always request assistance, volunteer to provide it, or submit a joy or sorrow to a caring community page on our website, or by speaking to any member of the pastoral care team. Let us share together now the names of anyone we know who could use some special care and attention. You may call the name out loud or type it into the chat. As we share these names, may the love of this community hold them all.
Join with me in a mood of meditation, reflection, or prayer. Dear Spirit of love, we address you in our hearts and minds' imagination in order to give voice to the sorrows that weigh on our hearts and the joy and hope that lifts us up. For thereby articulating these things, we orient ourselves to a fuller engagement with our world in all of its grief and all of its gladness. Speaking these words, we prepare ourselves for the lives of compassion to which we know we are called. Spirit of love, be near us as we mourn the violence in the Israel-Hamas war, which, as of September 8th, had claimed over 42,000 lives, 96% of them Palestinian. We mourn the violence of the Russo-Ukrainian war, which has claimed over 14,000 lives. We mourn the violence in Sudan's civil war, which since April 2023 has claimed 15,000 lives and displaced 8.2 million people. We mourn the drowning in the English channels as migrants from Eritrea seek asylum and safety. Be with us. Fill our hearts with compassion. Help us build a world in which everyone is respected, everyone belongs. Let our resolve to realize this world be strengthened by our very grief. Everywhere there are creative and caring solutions happening. In South Africa, a health train bringing free care across the country. In Kenya, drones are used to deliver HIV meds. In the UK, a ban on junk food TV ads before 9 p.m. In several US states, new passive house standards that drastically reduce energy demand. In Mexico, a tree army defends Mexico's trees from mistreatment. In Alaska, new protections for mineral exploration and development were extended over 28 million acres of public lands. We carry in our hearts the knowledge that many loving and kind people are working diligently for peace and justice and sustainability. Dear Spirit of life, help us be among them more vigorously and ever more effectively. Amen.
May the light of our community shine on the broken places of the world, and may we not look away when we are needed. May we confront what is cruel, heal what is broken, and delight in what is good. We light 3 candles, one for the joys and sorrows shared aloud, one for those shared in writing, and one for those held silently among us. For all these, we now observe a minute of silence.
Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Sing with me, sing with me, sing with me, oh my soul. Sing with me, sing with me, sing with me, oh my soul. A number of writers have been attracted to the thesis that God is a verb. In 1940, Buckminster Fuller wrote, "Here is God's purpose. For God to me, it seems, is a verb, not a noun, proper or improper, is the articulation, not the art, objective or subjective, is loving, not the abstraction love commanded or entreated, is knowledge dynamic, not legislative code, not proclamation law, not academic dogma, nor ecclesiastic canon. Yes, God is a verb, and most active, connotating the vast harmonic reordering of the universe from the unleashed chaos of energy. And there is born, unheralded, a great natural peace, not out of exclusive pseudo-static security, but out of including, refining, dynamic balancing." And here's how the poet Wild Bill Balding puts it: "God is a verb, not a noun. I am who I am, I will be who I will be. Dynamic, seething, active web of love poured out, given, received, exchanged, one God in vibrant community, always on the move, slipping through our fingers, blowing through the nets we cast to hold and name, confine to nouns, to labels, freeze frame, stasis, pinned like a butterfly, solid, cold, controlled, lifeless. I am who I am. I will be who I will be. Not pinned down by names, labels, buildings, traditions, or even by nails to wood. I am a verb, not a noun, living, free, exuberant, always on the move." And Jean-Claude Coven writes, "God is indeed a verb. He is not the creator. He is the ongoing unfolding of creation itself. There is nothing that is not a part of this unfolding. Thus, there can be nothing separate from God. When we perceive God as a noun, we envision him as the creator, the architect of, and therefore separate from his creation. Identifying ourselves as part of that creation, we see ourselves not only separate from our source, but separate from each other and all other manifest things as well. So once I viewed God as a verb instead of a noun, my perception of life shifted. Everything around me, manifest or no, became God. There was only God. And when someone spoke to me, it was with God's voice. And when I listened, it was with God's heart. And as you begin to view God not as the creator, but as the constantly changing dance of creation itself, you'll discover God in everything you see, including yourself. We come now to the offering, and recalling again the words of the freedom of belief section of the UUA bylaws, congregational freedom and the individual's right of conscience are central to our UU heritage. Congregations may establish statements of purpose, covenants, and bonds of union so long as they do not require members to adhere to a particular creed. Now, in the spirit of gratitude, of which the offering is an expression, I mention now 3 of the more than 30 items currently on our Singing Gratitude bulletin board. First, Bill and Katie Allen for artistic and tech talents and leadership skills. Second, Barb Royal and Donnie Fiddler, who led a chorus last fall in eldership. And third, Tracy Ox, our church administrator, for expertise and attention to detail. The offering then is gratefully given and gratefully received.
We began today's service referring to the freedom of belief section of our bylaws, and Barb referenced that section again just now in introducing the offertory. Our long tradition of freedom of belief has fostered development of communities of theological diversity. On the one hand, we Unitarian Universalists do cherish our theological diversity. We like being around people with a range of viewpoints and practices. On the other hand, though, we aren't always able to be as hospitable to divergent religious viewpoints as we could be. Some years ago, Our Unitarian Universalist Association conducted a nationwide survey of our various theological identities. It asked people to identify their own theological identity and indicate whether they felt completely welcomed in their congregation. Overall, the UU Christians said they felt more or less accepted, but they felt sometimes marginalized. The UU Pagans said they felt basically accepted, but sometimes a little marginalized. The UU Humanists also felt mostly accepted, albeit, they said, sometimes a little marginalized. The UU Buddhists said, we're fine. Those Buddhists. To think in a welcoming and hospitable way about people with diverse theological views, a way that makes everyone, regardless of their preferred metaphors for matters of ultimate concern, fully accepted and integral to the center of our congregational life, it helps to think for a moment about truth. The thing is, our default position, which we think to ourselves, even if we don't say it aloud, goes like this. My way of understanding the world is true, and other people's bizarre fantasies will just have to be tolerated, because we're proud of our theological diversity. So let's think through a little bit this notion of truth so as to minimize the perhaps unconscious stumbling block that can be for us. As a tool for conceptualizing this, allow me to submit for your consideration that there are two categories of truths. Call them hard truths and deep truths. Hard truths are the domain of scientists and historians. Criminal justice attorneys attempting to convince a jury of what happened on the night of the 23rd are functional historians sifting through evidence to tell a story of what happened in the past. If you find yourself on the witness stand at a criminal trial, they are not going to be interested in poetry. They do not want your creative metaphors that limn the unspeakable depths of what your soul has experienced. The genre we know as history is commonly said to have been invented by the Greek writer Herodotus, whose Histories was written around in the 430s BCE. But the germ of the concept probably grew from the earliest forms of criminal justice. That is, from a community's need to make some kind of determination of moral responsibility for a harm done. To make that determination of just what was done to whom, when the facts may be in dispute, we required the community to consider what evidence could be marshaled by the competing voices. There probably wasn't any Sherlock Holmes-type deduction from the physical evidence, and the party's status in the community probably carried more sway than to us would seem fair, but still, there was something like character witnesses and some attempt to work out what most likely really happened. For a long time in human history, that was probably the only sphere where discussions about what I'm calling hard truth had a function. Outside of that, storytellers wove stories about the origin of the world, of how the people came to be the people they understood themselves to be. And these mythic tales were assessed by communal agreement that they were satisfying stories. Those stories were not matters of hard or evidence-based truth, but they did have deep truth. Those mythic stories told deep truths and moral lessons. They were true by virtue of corresponding to the moral reality of the community. And then science came along, though it took a long time. There were various methodologies of what I would call pre-science or proto-science through ancient and medieval times, but a full-on embrace of the experimental method didn't happen until about 400 years ago. If I had to pinpoint it, I'd say 1642. That's the year that Galileo died and the year Newton was born, kind of the center year of the transitional phase. Scientific method doesn't come naturally to Homo sapien brains. Our species has been around 300,000 years. Suppose we say exactly 300,000 years. That would mean it took 299,600 years to grasp and adopt the scientific method, which we have had for only the last 400 years. What science has given us in these 400 years is amazing powers of prediction and control. When you can predict what things will do, you can set up conditions to make them do it, and boom, we're off. Steam engines, electric lights, automobiles, airplanes, radios, and so on to all the devices that we live with today. I hear my mom's voice in my head. She was a physics professor, and she's saying to me that science aims to explain our world. Okay, Mom, but it's a particular kind of explanation, namely the kind that facilitates prediction and control. The hard truths of history and in criminal law provide us our best guess about what happened, and the hard truths of science provide us with amazing prediction and control. But we want more than to predict and control our world. We want to know how to befriend it. We need to love and to belong, and to know how to think about what's right and what's wrong, what's good and worthy and valuable, and what isn't. We need to know not just what has happened or what now could happen, but how to decide what should happen, what we want to happen. And for that, we need truth that is deep rather than hard. Poetic truth that goes to the depth of our sense of who we are and what is our place in all of this. Science and history figure into that, but they cannot by themselves convey these deep truths. A good novel is fiction, but it contains deep truths that science and history alone cannot. I have said before that theology is best understood as a kind of poetry. So science and religion have no quarrel with each other. They can't. One is in the hard truth business and the other in the deep truth business. I know that sometimes some people have thought that what scientists were saying was a threat to what their theology said. The Catholic Church tried Galileo for heresy for saying that the earth went around the sun, not vice versa. And a lot of people, even today, regard evolution as in conflict with their religious teachings. But that doesn't mean we have to see that there is any conflict. Their religious teachings, which we might not share, represent their sense of deep truth, while evolution is the best product we have so far of our quest for hard truths. For us, it's out of place to start citing T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland on the witness stand. And in just the same way, it's out of place to start citing Genesis in biology class, though both are profoundly meaningful and important works of literature that command our attention in our quest for deep truth. If our religious differences are understood as matters of different poetry, then if a new style of poetry shows up, then let us be interested, curious, maybe even playful with the possibilities that these new metaphors open up. After all, we are here a religious institution, and the human grappling after deep truth is what we're all about. And since theological literacy helps, that is knowing more about what sorts of theological options are out there, let me give an example. Maybe for some of us, this will be a good practice in being sympathetic and open to ways of thinking about God. Maybe there's some poetry here that you can add to your very own heart's spiritual anthology. For radical hospitality goes beyond tolerance, beyond accepting, beyond welcoming, and embraces a willingness to be changed by the other, an interest in looking for essentially new poems to add to your own personal spiritual poetry anthology. The example is one that some of us may know, but not, I think, all of us, or at least maybe we could use a reminder. Process theology. And that's what we'll be looking at in part 2. Bruce, how about something maybe discordant, but with a hopeful resolution? Nice, thank you. Process theology began in the early 20th century as a development from process philosophy created by Alfred North Whitehead. Whitehead was a mathematician turned philosopher. He published Process and Reality in 1929. Western thought, ever since Plato, has privileged being over becoming. Whitehead flipped that. He said reality is fundamentally becoming. Process is what's fundamental, and things are just temporary manifestations of unfolding process, as opposed to the predominant presumption that things are fundamental and that they change is non-essential, an imperfection, a design flaw. The perfection of God, from the Platonists through Thomas Aquinas and up to modern times, was God's unchangingness. Whitehead said, change is not a bug in the system. It's not a bug, it's a feature. Change is not non-essential, it's the essence. The ultimate principle is creativity. The process of creating takes precedence over any product creation. Whitehead gives us process philosophy, and while Whitehead did write about the place of God in his philosophy, process philosophy did not become full-fledged process theology until the Unitarian Charles Hartshorne's work expanded, extended, and revised Whitehead. Born in 1897, Hartshorne lived to the age 103. He was giving a talk at our UU General Assembly as recently as 1994. For Hartshorne's process theology, God is not omnipotent. God is finite, changing and growing along with creation. Reality is made of events, not material substance. God, being finite and not omnipotent, does not have full control over what happens. Rather, God engages with us in a process in which both we and God develop together. God changes. God offers us possibilities, the full meaning of which God doesn't know. As we, God's creatures, explore the offered possibilities, creator and creation alike, learn, grow, develop, allowing new possibilities to be offered. Hartshorne held that people do not experience subjective immortality, but we do have objective immortality in that our experience lives on forever in God, who contains all that was. Just as you, throughout your life, build on your experiences, developing new experiences shaped by all prior experience, so too God, after your death, continues to build on your experiences. Your experience continues to contribute to God's new experiences for all eternity. Yes, God transcends the world, but the world also transcends God. Yes, God creates the world, but the world also creates God. We are a part of God. Our growth is a part of God's growth. God's knowledge is the sum total of the knowledge of all life forms. God's desires, the sum of the desires of life. The emphasis on change is what leads to the idea that God is a verb. For our readings this morning, Barb shared words from Buckminster Fuller, Bill Balding, and Jean-Claude Coven articulating this God is a verb thesis. UU Minister Stephen Finney adds, I believe that the holy is in the process of giving and taking of the love we have. In other words, the holy, or God, is the process of interchanging love. You might find this perspective radical or exhilarating. You might also have noticed that the God is a verb people are not actually using God as a verb. They say, for instance, that reality is more a matter of events than substances. Okay, events does convey a more dynamic quality than substances, but if we're talking about parts of speech, event is just as much a noun as substance is. They speak of God as process, and as creativity, and as energy. Those are all nouns. Jean-Claude Coven said God was unfoldment, and infinity, and everything, and a dance. Nouns, every one. For that matter, verb is a noun. Still, the point is, there is in our life and our experience a cause for wonder and mystery and reverence. And this is better thought of as a process, a dance, a creativity, a love, than as a person or an entity. Calling it a verb is just a way of alluding to its active doing. But let's suppose, just to be playful, that we did want to be sticklers for actually meaning what we said. How would that go for God to be a verb? Well, verbs need a subject if we're going to speak in sentences, so we could say, the universe gods. There's the vast cosmos, quietly, grandly godding along through the ages. Reality, gods. I God, you God, he, she, it gods, we God, you God, they God. All God's children, God. And what sort of activity is it to God? Following the lead of the process and the creativity theologians, to God is to unfold like an infinite flower opening its petals, to develop through a process of interaction with all the rest of the godding universe. To God is to become transparent to the creativity of the universe shining through you. Certainly not a hard truth, but possibly a deep one. To God is to fandango across the ballroom of oneness, to trip the light fantastic, not with, but as the mountains, rivers, great wide earth, the sun and the moon and the stars. To God is, in the words of Sufi poet Hafiz, to laugh at the word too. It is to swim in the sea of mystery, to quaff from the cup of abundance. To God is to suffice. Whoever you are, whatever your imagined shortcomings, you are enough. To God is to do and be everything that you do and are. Why would anyone want to call these activities godding? We might call them godding to help us remember, to help us wake up to and attune ourselves to the fact that everything we do and are is a part of the whole, a part of the dance, the mystery of creativity, the unpredictable unfolding of new things under the sun. For the medievals, to apprehend reality at its most ultimate meant to conceive of changeless eternity. Above this world of corruption and change, God was pure, immutable, outside of time. To think of God as an active verb is to emphasize the time during which the actions take place. It is to put God in time rather than removed from time. It is to perceive the holy in change rather than imagine it in changelessness. It calls attention to divinity as spread throughout all of nature, as manifested by the activities of nature. Verb theology can incorporate modern science, building a deep truth with building blocks of the hard truth from science, that reality at its most fundamental level is composed of shimmering waves of probability, fluctuating, intertwining matter and energy. Instead of saying that species just are, biologists now understand species as in flux, and that hard truth can be a building block in cultivating spiritual awe and wonder at the playing out of unpredictable creativity all around us. Now, I have been imagining God as an intransitive verb, but let's continue to be playful, yet at the same time heartful. What if God were a transitive verb? If reality gods, what does it god? Perhaps we could say the universe gods you, and it gods me. Reality gods the mud and the flowers alike. It gods the Republicans and the Democrats alike. It godded Palestinians and Hamas, and it godded Israel and its most militant leaders. It godded despotic governments at the very moment they were disappearing their own people and turning away aid. There is an activity of relationship between all things, an active connection of each thing with all things. In the fullest realization of God as transitive verb, everything gods everything else. Unitarian theologian Henry Nelson Wyman said that the universe becomes spiritual as more events become signs, as these signs take on richer content of qualitative meaning, as these meanings form a network of interconnected events comprehending all that is happening in the world. It would seem to carry Wyman to his logical conclusion that the universe will have attained total, complete, and perfect spirituality when everything signifies everything else, or when, we might say, everything gods and is godded by everything else. Godding, then, would be the activity of building meaning by building interconnection and relationship. The butterfly in Australia gods the weather in Chicago. You god the stars, and the stars god you. Joy gods sadness, and sadness gods joy. This use of God may seem to mean something like connects with, or interdependently arises with. But more. This way of thinking maybe helps us see through the illusion that there are any separate things. Everything is everything else. Verbs need a subject. That is, I said, if we're going to speak in sentences. But what if we dispensed with sentences? Could we tell the story of life, of creation, in a language without subjects or objects, a language of only verbs, a language that perhaps the cosmos itself speaks when it whispers to itself or in your ear? Because it is timeless, we need verbs with no tense, past tense, present tense, future tense. And because it is both one and many, we need verbs that are neither singular nor plural. Because it is infinite, the cosmos speaks in the infinitive. So in the pursuit of poetic truth, I offer in closing this poem consisting entirely of infinitive verbs. To come, to go, to jump, to run, to twirl, to birth, to grow, to laugh, to fall, to break, to cry, to rage, to abandon, to return, to embrace, to love, to wound, to bleed, to weep, to arise, to work, to play, to smile, to journey, to heal, to arrive, to arrive, to arrive, to bless. Amen.
Please join with me in singing number 23, Bring Many Names, that Bruce will play through for once, and we'll join in. Bring many names. changed by what you've started, quick to be delighted, singing as you go. Hail and Hosanna, young growing God, great living God, never falling down, joyful darkness far beyond our seeing, closer yet than breathing, everlasting home. Hail and Hosanna, great living God. And please read with me the extinguishing chalice words. The circle of our worship has come around full. We have lit our chalice, and now we extinguish it. One circle within the sacred circles of life. One note within the harmony of life's rhythms.
And now for those of you who see God, may God be with you. For those who embrace life, may life return your affection. And for those who seek a better way, may the path be found and the courage to take it step by step. Go in peace.